Okay, so what if I told you that deep in the highlands of Jalisco, Mexico, thousands of strange artifacts have been found? And I'm not talking about pottery. We're talking about stones that seem to show aliens, UFOs, and a completely different version of human history. This is the story of the Stone Library of Ojuelos, a collection so wild it makes you wonder if our history books have a whole chapter just missing.
I mean, really let that sink in for a second. We're not talking about a discovery that just tweaks the timeline a little bit. We're talking about something that could fundamentally change our understanding of who we are and where we come from. So, what exactly did they pull out of those hills? And what on earth is this story they seem to be telling?
So, our story kicks off in the small town of Ojuelos. For a while, there had been these whispers, these rumors about some really strange stones carved with impossible figures. I mean, they didn't look like any known Aztec or Mayan gods. They looked a lot more like the kind of extraterrestrials you see in movies. For a team of investigators, this was ground zero. They had to start here.
Now, they didn't just run off into the hills chasing rumors, they did the logical thing first. They went straight to the local museum. Why? Because some of these very stones had apparently been official artifacts. They'd been cataloged and were even on display for the public at one point. They wanted to see the hard evidence first. But almost as soon as they started, they hit a brick wall. The display cases? Empty. The storage boxes? Nothing inside. The very artifacts that were the whole reason for their trip had just vanished. Poof. It felt like a total dead end. But, as you can probably guess, it wasn't. So, with the official path completely blocked, they had to get creative. They decided to track down the source, the guy who actually found the original stones in the first place. His name was Juan Cardenas, and about 50 years earlier, he's the one who started pulling these incredible objects right out of the ground. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn from a normal investigation into something else. Because Juan Cardenas told them he didn't just stumble upon these things. No, he claimed he dreamed about where the stones were. He'd have a dream, go to the exact spot he saw, and boom, there they were. Suddenly, this isn't just archaeology anymore, is it? Okay, so let's recap. The museum evidence is gone, and the main witness finds artifacts through mystical dreams. The investigators knew they had to get out of town and into the field, so they put their faith in an anonymous source they just called the guide and followed him off-road deep, deep into the wild. And listen, we're not talking about a casual nature walk here. This was a grueling, hours-long trek through really rough terrain. And the whole time, the guide is pointing things out. Mounds over there, strange formations here, telling them they're literally walking through the ruins of an entire lost city. A city that isn't on any map, full of old ceremonial sites, houses, and roads. But even stumbling upon a potential lost city wasn't the final destination. That was just the area where all these stones were being found. The guide's real mission was to take them to meet a private collector, someone who lived out there and had been quietly hoarding all the artifacts that people were pulling from these hills for years. And when they got there, the sheer scale of what this person had was just staggering. It wasn't just a handful of stones, it was hundreds upon hundreds of them, all covered in these detailed, bizarre carvings. The handful of pieces that went missing from the museum, that was nothing compared to this. This was the real library. So, the billion-dollar question, what in the world was carved on all these stones? After about 9 hours of just frantically trying to document everything, they started to see patterns emerge from the chaos. They began grouping the images, and the story that unfolded was just, well, it was consistent, and it was incredibly weird. Okay, so the first category that jumped out at them was these winged beings. You have figures that look like your classic gray alien. Skinny body, big head, but they have these intricate, almost feathery wings. The theory from the source material is that ancient people wouldn't have understood a spaceship, so they might have depicted these flying visitors with wings, because that's the only thing they knew that could fly. Now, this next theme is probably the most disturbing one they found, and it showed up over and over again. The stones constantly show these weird, alien-looking babies being held up, almost like an offering to UFOs in the sky. It's what led the investigators to this really out-there theory. Could this be a record of some kind of cosmic deal? Maybe trading human genetics for alien knowledge?
And it wasn't just one type of alien either. The collection is like a who's who of extraterrestrial visitors. You've got the grays, of course, but you've also got insect-looking beings, reptilian ones with scales, and even others that look like they're wearing full spacesuits. It's pretty wild, especially when you consider that ufologists today have cataloged dozens of different alien types. But here is the detail that just makes your brain short-circuit. Right next to all these crazy alien carvings, there are symbols that archaeologists recognize instantly. Glyphs from Mayan and Aztec cultures. The two are just woven together. And this impossible combination led some to a pretty staggering conclusion. What if this wasn't just some random culture? What if this was the mother culture that all the others came from? All of these different pieces of the puzzle, the winged beings, the offered babies, the different species, it all seems to build up to one single artifact. A stone so detailed that it appears to tell a story so big, it could literally rewrite the origin of our entire species. They call this piece the Genesis Stone, and it basically lays the whole story out. You've got a gray alien communicating with a human right under a classic flying saucer. But it's the details in the sky that are just stunning. The carving shows two suns, which many connect to the Zeta Reticuli star system. And it shows 3 planets in an alignment that perfectly matches Orion's belt. You know, the same pattern the Great Pyramids are said to mirror on the ground. So here it is. This is the heart of the whole thing. When you connect all the dots, the alien babies, the different ET species, the star maps on the Genesis Stone, you land on one absolutely mind-bending conclusion: the theory of cosmic hybridization. The idea that these stones aren't just art, they're a historical record, a record claiming that humanity was genetically engineered by visitors from the stars. Of course, I know what you're thinking, because it's what I'm thinking. Are they fake? It's the obvious question. But the people behind this discovery have a pretty good counter-argument. Just think about what it would take for a forger to pull this off. They'd need to be an expert in ufology, ancient cultures, and astronomy. They'd need to know about Zeta Reticuli and Orion's belt. And then they'd have to spend years carving hundreds of these things. It's a pretty tall order. The discoverers are on record saying the artifacts are right there, ready to be studied. They're practically begging mainstream science to come and test them. But they also suggest why that hasn't happened. They think there's a resistance, a hesitation that's maybe born out of fear, the fear of what it would actually mean for our world if these things turned out to be real. And in the end, that's where the story leaves us. It's laid out all this incredible, controversial evidence, and it basically challenges you, the viewer, to make up your own mind. But it also leaves us with this really unsettling final thought. What happens when a discovery comes along that could change everything we know about ourselves, if the people who write the history books just refuse to even open the cover?